So in this section, we will get to know about Angular. At the end of this section, you will know what is Angular, what is single page application, what is Angular CLI, how to set up an Angular CLI on our computer, how to generate an Angular app using the Angular CLI. And also you will learn about the Angular project's file structure from A to Z. Let's get started. In web application development, we have to look at two sides, front-end and the back-end side. The front-end side will load on the client side inside the web browser, and the back-end side loads inside the web server. The end user will only see the front-end, not the back-end. To design a front-end, we use, you guys already know, HTML, CSS and JavaScript. We use HTML to build the structure of the web page. We use CSS to make the website looks better by adding colors, fonts, layouts, etc. With the usage of JavaScript, we can make the website more logical, which means we can make the website dynamic. We can say something if someone clicks this button, show an alert, or change this color to something else. Likewise, we can manipulate the DOM using the JavaScript. Doing this manipulating the DOM using the only JavaScript, it is very hard and also it consumes lots of time. As a solution for this, big companies like Google, Facebook are introduced some JavaScript frameworks. Google introduced the Angular and Facebook introduced the React. So what is Angular? Angular is a front-end framework built using the JavaScript by Google. So this is not something new. This is built with JavaScript. So keep this in your mind. In Angular application, still we're gonna be using the HTML, CSS and JavaScript. But with the Angular framework, we can build our web application fast and robust with pre-built JavaScript methods. So we don't need to write everything from scratch. Like the Bootstrap CSS framework, we learned about Bootstrap in the previous section. So if you can remember, in Bootstrap we have some pre-styled CSS classes. So by importing them to our website, we can design our web application fast. We don't need to write styles from scratch, right? So once again, Angular also something like Bootstrap CSS framework. In Angular also, we have some pre-built methods and techniques. By using them, we can build our web application fast and more robust. So let me show you a quick example. Think I have a paragraph tag in my website. So I want to add a CSS class to this paragraph tag using the JavaScript. So if you are doing this using the pure JavaScript, so first I have to add an ID tag to this p tag to identify this paragraph tag in JavaScript. So after that, we have to capture this p tag in JavaScript using this ID. For that, we have to use the document.getElementById. So let element assign document.getElementById, and inside the brackets we have to pass this paragraph ID. As you can see here, this is the ID of this p tag. Alright, next we have to assign the CSS class to this paragraph tag. Element, which is this paragraph tag we captured earlier, dot class name, assign CSS class name. So I am using this example dash class. So in here we are using the CSS class name property, which is this example class, and assigning the CSS class to this p tag. So this is the DOM manipulation in a plain old JavaScript. Let's look at how to do this in Angular. This is very easy. In Angular we have class name property binding. Just put this inside the p tag. This will something looks like this. And assign the CSS class name. So comparing to the JavaScript way, this is easy and very clean, right? So this Angular property binding class name is a pre-built technique in Angular. But at the end of the day, this class name property will compile to this JavaScript because browser doesn't know about Angular thing. Browser only knows JavaScript. With the Angular framework, we can do this by a single line of code rather than typing 3-4 of lines. So once again, Angular is a front-end JavaScript framework for building client application in HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Hope you guys got the idea. So what is this SPA? This SPA stands for Single Page Application. A single page application is an app that doesn't need to reload the page during its use and works within a browser. Think of the apps we use daily: Facebook, Google Maps, Gmail, Twitter, Google Drive, or even GitHub. All these are examples of a SPA. Let me show you an example. Go to the gmail.com. After you log into your Gmail account, you can see your inbox. Click one of your emails. If you look at this carefully, you can see this will open the email without refreshing the page. So this is what single page application. So what is happening here? Most resources single page application needs like HTML, CSS and scripts are loading at the launch of the app and don't need to be reloaded during the usage. The only thing that changes is the data that is transmitted to and from the server. As a result, the application is very responsive to the user's queries and doesn't have to wait for client-server communication all the time. One of the best advantages of a SPA is the user experience and the speed. The user enjoys a natural environment of the app without having to wait for the page reloads and other things. You remain on the same page, which is powered by JavaScript programming language. So we can build or develop single page applications with most of modern JavaScript front-end frameworks, including the Angular. So we can call an Angular app as a single page application. The Angular CLI is a command line interface tool that is used to initialize, develop, scaffold, and maintain Angular applications directly from a command shell. In other words, if you can remember, Angular is a JavaScript framework. This framework has default pre-built files. In order to work with Angular, we need those files and techniques. With the help of this Angular CLI, we can create an Angular new app without any problem with a single line of command. Not only that, I told you earlier, but browser also doesn't know Angular. So at the end of the day, we have to compile Angular to JavaScript, or we have to build Angular app to production. So we can build the Angular app using this Angular CLI. Likewise, we can update, maintain, scaffold, and develop an Angular app using this Angular CLI. Hope you guys got the idea. So let's set up the Angular CLI. Go to this Angular CLI website, cli.angular.com. This is the official website of Angular CLI. To use Angular CLI, first we have to install Angular CLI globally on our computer. To install Angular CLI, we need Node Package Manager. Node Package Manager bundled with the Node.js. So we have set up this in the first section of this course. So if anyone of you not installed the Node.js, just go to the nodejs.org and simply download and install this recommended version. After this installed, let's install the Angular CLI. All we have to do is just run this command, copy this command and paste it inside your command prompt or the terminal. If you are on a Mac, add sudo beginning of this command. Otherwise, you guys will get a permission error. PC users don't need to modify anything, just run this command. npm install -g at Angular/CLI. So this command will install Angular CLI on our computer globally. So we can access this Angular CLI from anywhere on our computer. This G flag stands for global, right? This npm is the node package manager and this is the Angular CLI. We have installed Angular CLI on our computer. Now we can use the Angular CLI commands. In the previous video, we have successfully installed Angular CLI. Now we can generate an Angular app using the Angular CLI. So first, create a project folder. In previous, we have created our project folder inside the desktop. So I'm gonna use the same folder as my project folder for this section as well. This is optional. You guys can create this folder wherever you want. Now open the command prompt or the terminal. Navigate to the project folder. cd desktop. Hit enter. Again cd Udemy Angular Course folder. As you can see here, this is the project folder name that I created earlier. Now what I want to do is, I want to create an Angular app inside this project folder. To access Angular CLI, we have to use the ng command. Just n and g. Okay. If you can remember, we used the npm command to access the node package manager. Like that, we can access the Angular CLI by using the ng command. To create a new Angular app, we have to use the new command after this ng command. So ng new, then pass the project name. I'm giving the project name as ang intro. This project name can be any name as you wish. Then hit enter. At first, this will ask about the Angular strict mode. For now, give this to no. In the later section, we'll learn about the strict mode in detail. So give no to this and hit enter. After this, we get this router option. For this, give yes. So don't worry about this Angular router thing. We will learn about this in detail in a later section. Next, this will ask about the styling method, CSS or SCSS or SAS or less. We can select our preferred method. So in this course, we're gonna be use only the CSS. So select the CSS. This will generate the new Angular app and install all the dependencies for us. Wait until this complete. This may take several seconds to minutes depending on your computer and the internet speed. Our new Angular app is ready. Now open this Angular project inside the VS Code text editor. Open the VS Code, go to the file and select open. Navigate to the project folder. In my case, it is inside the desktop, and select the project folder. Inside that, I have this ang intro Angular app. So select that folder and give open. Alright. In VS Code, inside the file tree, we can see all these files. This is the default file structure of an Angular project. Now you guys may get scared by looking at these files. These all files are required files and default configuration files for the Angular framework. So we are not going to touch any of these files or the folders. We are only dealing with this src folder. Okay, so don't get confused. But I will explain these all files one by one, so you guys can just get to know what are these files and what these files are doing with the Angular framework. So Angular is using TypeScript instead of JavaScript for better maintainable bug-free codes. So these last 5 files are related to the TypeScript. So this last file, tslint.json file, is looking for TypeScript functionality errors. So next, this file tsconfig.spec.json file is responsible for TypeScript configuration for the application test. Application testing is a different topic which is not covered with this course. So just keep this in your mind. This file contains TypeScript configurations for application test. The next one is this tsconfig.app.json file. So this file includes TypeScript configuration for this Angular app, as well as this includes TypeScript and Angular template compiler options. Alright, next file is this tsconfig.json file. This is a solution style tsconfig.json file. This is used by editors and TypeScript language servers to improve the development experience. So this file is not doing anything with the compilers. So next we have a readme.md file which includes some Angular CLI instructions, how to run development server, how to build the app, how to generate components, etc. etc. So next we have these two files. This first file, package.json file. This file includes all the required npm package dependencies and also app details like name, version, and also the npm commands. These are all dependencies that we need in Angular project. So these all dependencies installed inside this node modules folder. As you can see here, all the dependents files installed inside this folder. Next we have this file package-log.json file, which includes version information for all packages installed into node modules by the npm client. Alright, next we have this karma.conf.js file, which includes karma unit test config for this Angular app. Next we have this angular.json file. This is the Angular CLI configuration file for this Angular project. Next we have this git ignore file, which is for specified ignored files for GitHub repo. So if you guys may wondering what is GitHub, GitHub is a version control system. So next we have this editor config file. This includes code editor configuration for this Angular project. Next we have this browser list src file, which includes different browser specific config details. Next we have these folders, this E2E folder for the end-to-end test files for the Angular app, and this node module folder, as I mentioned before, all the required files for Angular framework installed inside this node modules folder. So this is the folder where we're dealing with. Inside this src folder, we can see these three folders and these files. This app folder, we mostly work inside this app folder. We will generate all the files and logics inside this folder. Next we have this assets folder where we can put our media files like images, sound files, icons, etc. etc. Inside this folder, we have environment variable files, which contains all the environment variables. Next we have the favicon. This is the website icon. Next we can see the index.html file. This is the main index file for our Angular app. Next we can see this main.ts file. This is the main entry point for our application. This file compiles all app modules to run in the browser. Next, this polyfills.ts file provides polyfill scripts for browser support. Next, we have this styles.css file. So this file is like a global main CSS file where we can write our CSS codes for the Angular application. The last file inside the src folder is the test.ts file, which is the main entry point for testing Angular application. Next we have this app folder. If you can remember, I said earlier, this is the folder we are going to work mostly. For now, I give you a rough idea about these files. In later section, we will learn and work with these files in detail. Okay, this first file, app-routing.module.ts file, is dealing with our app routers. If you can remember, when we creating a new Angular app using the Angular CLI, it was asked a question that we want to add the Angular router to our Angular app. So I gave yes to this. That's why we are getting this file. This is automatically generated with the Angular CLI. If in some scenario we don't need Angular routers, so that case we can give no to that question. Then we don't get this routing file. I know some of you may think, what is this router? For now, just get to know about this file. We have a separate section for this. In that section, we will learn all of these in detail. If you don't get it, leave it. Next, we have these 4 app component files. Angular is a component based framework. So this is the main root component for our Angular app. With this HTML file, we can mark up all HTML codes. This CSS file, we can add the styles for this app component. So all the logics will code inside this app component TS file. And this app component spec.ts file is for unit test file for this app component. Next we have the app.module.ts file. In here we define the root modules that tells Angular how to assemble the application. So inside this file we can see these imports. With these module imports we are telling to Angular we are using these modules for this app. So import them and apply those modules to our app. So we can see this app routing module which is for the Angular router. If we don't add this inside this app module file, Angular doesn't know whether we are using the Angular router or not in this application. Without this import, Angular router will not work. Likewise, here we can see this app component import. So with this, Angular knows we have a component called app inside our Angular app. So this file is very important. So we have to add all the modules inside this file that we are using with our Angular app. Otherwise, we will get errors. So this is it for the file structure of Angular section. Some of you don't get these words, components, routers, modules. Just leave it for now. By the end of this course, you will get used to these words. Alright, this is it for this Angular introduction. In this section, we learned all about Angular, Angular CLI and Angular file structure. This is the start of learning Angular. So you might get lots of questions in your mind, or sometimes you may not get technical words. But don't worry, in later sections we will dive into the Angular in detail. And one more thing, if you have any question, please feel free to ask in the Q&A area. Let's meet you in the next section.